It's 9 o'clock on television, on radio and online in the United Kingdom and across the world. This is Mark Dolan Tonight.
A little bit, just a little bit, just a little bit.
Just a little bit woke. The RSPCA has lost the plot with a new propaganda advert attacking meat, attacking farmers. This once great organisation is now more interested in politics than pooches. Also, should Angela Rayner step down until the end of her police investigation? Plus, we'll be joined live by O.J. Simpson's lawyer in a Mark Dolan Tonight exclusive. Did he kill his girlfriend? And I'll be dealing with the pathetic Harry Potter stars who threw J.K. Rowling under the bus for stating basic biological facts. Really busy show tonight. 2 hours of big opinion, big debate and big entertainment. Mark Dolan Tonight is your perfect Saturday night in. So crack open a bottle of beer, a lager if you like, maybe a glass of wine, or fire up the kettle and let's get to work. 2 hours of big stories, big guests and big opinion. After the news headlines with Aaron Armstrong.
Very good evening. I'm Aaron Armstrong in the GB newsroom. Rishi Sunak says his heart goes out to all those affected by a knife attack at a shopping mall in Sydney that killed 6 people. The assailant injured a number of others, including a 9-month-old baby, before he was challenged by a member of the public. The baby remains in critical condition. The child's mother, named as Ash Good, died in hospital. The 40-year-old man was eventually shot dead by police, who say it wasn't terror-related. The Australian Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese, has praised the bravery of everyone involved.
Today, Bondi Junction was the scene of shocking violence, but it was also witness to the humanity and the heroism of our fellow Australians. Our brave police, our first responders, and of course everyday people who could never have imagined that they would face such a moment. And some of the footage is quite extraordinary.
Tim Loughton's become the latest Tory MP to say he'll stand down at the next general election. The backbencher, who represents East Worthing and Shoreham, served as Children's Minister in Lord Cameron's government. He said it was wiser to leave 5 minutes too soon than to continue for 5 years too long. He's the latest of 64 Conservative MPs to announce they're either standing down or not seeking re-election. A man who died following a stabbing in Croydon yesterday has been named as 22-year-old Ricard Salou Siafa. Met police officers responded to the scene at Fellmonger's Yard at 6 p.m. last night. Despite efforts from members of the public and emergency services, he died at the scene. A 20-year-old man was arrested on suspicion of murder and remains in custody. 9 people have been arrested on suspicion of committing public order offences during demonstrations in central London. Tens of thousands of pro-Palestinian protesters gathered in Westminster earlier to call for a ceasefire in Gaza and to urge the government to stop selling arms to Israel. A counter-demonstration against what organisers are calling anti-Israel hate also took place in the area. The suspects remain in police custody. The Israeli military has been placed on high alert in readiness for a potential Iranian attack. It comes after Iranian special forces seized a commercial ship with links to Israel off the coast of the United Arab Emirates. Iran has vowed to retaliate for an airstrike on its consulate in Syria almost 2 weeks ago, which killed a number of senior officers. Israel has cancelled school trips and youth activities ahead of the Passover festival and says dozens of combat planes are airborne in preparation. We can get more on all of our stories by signing up to GB News Alerts, scan the QR code on your screen or go to our website for more details. Now, it's back to Mark.
My thanks to Aaron Armstrong, who returns in an hour's time. Welcome to a very busy Mark Dolan Tonight, your perfect Saturday night in. Should Angela Rayner step down until the end of her police investigation? I'll be asking a top Westminster insider. Following the death of O.J. Simpson, in a Mark Dolan Tonight exclusive, we'll be joined by O.J.'s former lawyer, the man who helped him escape jail. Did O.J. Simpson kill his girlfriend? And in my Take at 10, looking forward to this, I'll be dealing with the pathetic Harry Potter stars who threw J.K. Rowling under the bus for stating basic biological facts. Reacting to the big stories of the day, my top pundits tonight: Claire Pearsall, Mike Reed, and Lisa McKenzie. Plus, at the most important part of the show, your opinions. Get your views in at gbnews.com/your say. That's right, gbnews.com/your say. And this show has a golden rule: we don't do boring. Not on my watch. I just won't have it, especially on a Saturday night. Now listen, have you got a drink in your hand? Glass of wine? A beer? An alcohol-free Guinness? Other drinks are available. Or what about a lovely pot of Yorkshire tea? Whatever you've got in your hands, let's get to work, because it's a busy 2 hours. And we start with my big opinion. Remember when Stonewall was about standing up for gay people but wound up throwing lesbians and gays under the bus in the name of trans ideology? Remember when Greenpeace was all about saving the planet but decided to become overtly political and threatened the Prime Minister's safety with a dangerous stunt at his private home? Remember when the Green Party were about protecting the environment but fell silent when we were forced to use those, in my view, worthless masks and pathetic COVID tests, which has led to billions of tons of plastic languishing in landfill and in our oceans? Enter stage left the RSPCA, a venerated 200-year-old institution set up to end animal cruelty. But their latest advert, which feels like a North Korean-style propaganda film, was cruel on anyone who had the misfortune to watch it. Here's a clip.
What you want, baby, I got it. What you need, you know I got it.
All I'm asking.
That advert was longer and more boring than Oppenheimer. Anti-meat, anti-farming, anti-human. The ad uses a song by Aretha Franklin to sell the message, but I found the whole thing Franklin revolting. Like so many charitable bodies swept up in the tide of progressive liberalism, the RSPCA has become an activist organisation, proved by this 2-minute rant, which basically implies that farming is bad, we should probably all go vegan, and killing or eating animals is wrong, glossing over the fact that beef farming, for example, feeds millions of people with great nutrition in the form of meat, milk, butter, cheese, whey, and even leather for our shoes. Weeding out animal cruelty is, of course, massively important, and in that the RSPCA do a fantastic job. But it's not their job to question the existence of farming altogether. I'm sorry, guys, but we eat living things. Meat, fish, eggs. We always have, we always will, we always should. Get over it. In the ad, we're supposed to feel bad for eating chickens, as we're shown a vast barn packed with the creatures. Well, it looks all right to me. None of these birds are in cages. They're fed and watered. In fact, that part of the advert made me quite hungry. I was tempted to get KFC on speed dial. Other restaurants are available. Tellingly, the chief executive of the RSPCA, Chris Sherwood, has admitted that whilst recognition for the charity is high, donations are low. I wonder why that would be. Perhaps it's because, like so many charities, the RSPCA has lost sight of its original purpose. With echoes of the so-called public information films during COVID, this advert from the RSPCA feels like so-called nudge messaging, in which you're watching the ad and are meant to feel bad about any animal dying. I'm so sorry, guys. The truth is that farmers raise animals and we eat them. Chickens turn into wings and burgers, salmon find their way into fish pies, and Daisy the cow finds herself in a bolognese. Yes, all of this propaganda from the RSPCA is utter bolognese, if you ask me. Watching this ad, apparently mowing the lawn is really bad because it kills bees. Is that really the RSPCA's greatest concern, as kittens are being bundled into wheelie bins and bags of puppies slung into the canal? Someone gets in trouble in the ad for swatting a fly with a newspaper. Isn't that what you're supposed to do? I mean, that's my hobby, if I'm honest with you. I find The Guardian particularly good for squashing moths. Greyhound racing is bad, apparently. Well, there can be no fun, can there, in the brave new world of woke? And they can't resist the politically correct mantra of kindness. Anyone that spent more than 11 seconds on Twitter will find that the Be Kind crowd are anything but. Predictably, BBC Nature campaigner Chris Packham pops up, a man who has previously said it may be time to break the law to save the planet. His appearance in the ad tells you everything you need to know about the ad, about the campaign, and about the direction of the charity. Now, I often donate to the RSPCA, and I'm going to continue to do so. And I urge you to donate as well, so that their brilliant vets and nurses can put squashed hedgehogs back together, house injured foxes, re-inflate flattened moggies, expose dodgy and cruel farmers, and bring disgusting owners who abuse their pets to justice. This is work in which the RSPCA is peerless and outstanding. And that's what they should stick to, protecting animals, not lecturing humans. This is an organisation which is increasingly about politics, not pooches. It's run by campaigners who want to hound the public. Now, I don't think they should be put down, but it's time the RSPCA spent some time in the doghouse. Your reaction, a brand new way of communicating with the show. gbnews.com/your say. I'll get to your opinions shortly, but first, my top pundits with me this evening. Former government advisor Claire Pearsall. We also have legendary radio DJ Mike Reid and anarchist, author and top professor Lisa Mackenzie. She is a doctor, but she keeps that quiet. Great to see all three of you. Claire, welcome to the show. The RSPCA have, they've strayed into politics here, haven't they? I mean, we've got no problem with them rescuing drowned rabbits and all the rest of it, but that's not the message of this ad.
No, it isn't. They don't like farming, they don't like us squashing flies or spiders, and there's an awful bit at the end about a snail. Somebody looks like they're going to tread on a snail. Now, they're not doing it deliberately. It's in the way, it's walking along. You know, these things happen, but the RSPCA should be about looking after animals, welfare of animals, and bringing those to justice who do them harm. And that's where it fails. I've had a real problem with the RSPCA. Things have been reported in my local area, whether it be dogs, cats, horses, donkeys, sheep. RSPCA won't come out because they say it doesn't sound as if it meets their threshold.
Yeah, I mean, protecting snails. Can I tell you that Mrs. Dolan spends every waking hour trying to kill snails?
Well, my husband is the spider catcher, squasher, dealer of, because that's what I don't like them. I run away from them. He has to deal with them and they have to go, and I'm afraid they have to be dead. Well,
I've definitely got Nigel Nelson in the alpha male category. That's a given. Speaking of which, Mike Reid, how are you this evening?
I'm very well, thank you. Yes, a lot of people throw snails, don't they, into their neighbours' gardens.
I do.
They get
Here,
it's a pleasure to throw them. It's that great crunching sound when they land. Am I being naughty? Am I going to get cancelled by the RSPCA?
Probably, yes, yes.
Well, here's the thing, Mike. I mean, you're a broadcaster, you're a communicator. What did you make of the ad? Is it good communications, or have they crossed the line?
Yeah, I'm wondering whether it's the advertising agency that have led them into this, whether they have suggested it as a cool and a woke thing to do. Wouldn't this be a good idea? Aretha Franklin's not around to say, no, you can't use that, because a lot of people wouldn't, in certain situations, say, no, I'm sorry. You know, in political things, they say, you can't use my song. Thank you very much. Whether it's the advertising agency that's led them down this route, I don't know. But whether the R could be taken away, because, of course, the King has farms. Charles has farms.
Very true.
So if they're anti-farms, maybe the R might be taken away and it could be the SPCA.
I definitely think there was an undertone that eating meat is bad, that farming is somehow cruel. Is that an over-interpretation, Lisa?
I think the thing I didn't like about it is that suggesting that people who eat meat don't respect animals, and that's not true, because I eat meat, but I also would never harm an animal. I don't even believe in pets. I don't think animals should be in
captivity.
Yeah, I just don't think that, you know. But so I would never harm.
You accept the principle that cows are farmed by professionals and we eat.
Yeah, and I also, you know, I'm also a humanist, so I start, you know, I think, imagine we all stopped eating meat tomorrow. We watch this and we go, oh my God, this is outrageous. We're not going to eat meat anymore. How tomorrow are we going to feed each other? Because the level of sort of plant food is not there to sustain us. And, you know, I do think as natural beings, meat is part of our diet.
And we need the protein.
Yeah, we need the protein.
We need protein. We're omnivores. Our sort of dental makeup suggests that. However, there is a flip side to this, Claire Pearsall, which is that the RSPCA are simply really reinforcing what they've always stood for, which is to protect the natural world, and in particular the animals that inhabit it. So why should we discriminate from, you know, the difference of a drowned moggy or a squashed hedgehog? Their point is the same, which is we are here to protect all animals, and that's what they want to communicate.
And that's absolutely fine as a message, but what you don't do is demonise the farming industry. And I think you're right that if you don't eat meat, then so many other industries fall down. You've got the dairy industry. Those farmers are under enormous pressure already. But it's things like leather. We all like to wear leather shoes, have a leather bag. It's all of those byproducts of it. So I don't think you can demonise one industry and say that they're all terrible, because they're not. There are some rogue farmers out there. Yeah, let's all agree with it. But you can't say that. And if you are there to protect animals, yeah, absolutely look at their conditions, look at the welfare of those animals. But farming as an industry sustains this entire country and needs to be funded.
This idea that it's anti-farming, is that an over-interpretation? But perhaps they might argue in the ad that they're focusing on the rogue farmers who are cruel to their cows and their chickens and their hens.
But that isn't what they're showing.
Yeah, and isn't
they're
that
showing
the
these very lovely sort of days
job?
cow.
Isn't that the RSPCA's job to kind of... We give money to the RSPCA so they can go and find out and stop that sort of thing.
Yeah.
You know, rather than... I think this not just zero-sum politics again, where you eat meat, bad, don't respect animals, or good, do, you know... And it's just that every single organisation are going for this zero-sum thing.
OK, well, what do you think, folks? Are the RSPCA wrong to put out an ad which has been perceived as anti-meat and anti-farming? Is farming a problem in this country? Would you like us to go plant-based? Let me know your thoughts. We have a brand new way of communicating. gbnews.com/your say. Coming up next in the big story, should Angela Rayner step down until the end of her police investigation? I'll be asking a top Westminster insider next.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
I don't think you can go and watch a Shakespeare play unless you already know it. It's almost like you have to understand the story and the characters, and perhaps have even done a bit of reading into it. Because if you went completely blind, especially in today's world where we don't speak in that kind of way, it is, I think, probably a bit alienating.
But Dawn is saying it is alienating at the moment because of the lack of representation.
You know, the actual phrasing they use, right, OK, the disproportionate representation propagated white, able-bodied, heterosexual, cisgender male narratives. I'm sure there's people sitting in a room going, what's the most ridiculous thing we can come up with today?
Yes.
But are really just chuck all these words at it, cisgender, and it's just insane. Of course, Shakespeare was what it was back in the day, and that's why it's mostly blokes and they're mostly white.
And lots of speculation that he was actually gay, isn't there? Because he never really saw Anne Hathaway very often and stayed away a lot of the time. I don't know, maybe he was a big
He might have been transgender for all I know. I mean, I don't...
Biggins, I'm looking at you.
No, I think you're right. I mean, you know, I think that goes for the profession too. I mean, I do think I mean, I remember seeing Macbeth in London with Judi Dench and Ian McKellen, and it was one of the most exciting evenings ever. And it was a cold night at the Donmar Theatre, outside and inside, and that gave it atmosphere. There are certain things, and you go along and see something else, and you think, I'll walk out in the interval.
Yeah. Macbeth is a sexy play, though.
Let's talk about, there's so many. Can I live to be 100?
Oh, this is depressing.
I think it is depressing. I like to stay here now. I don't want to live to 100.
don't say that.
I'm right behind you.
I don't even want to. My father died at 63. That'll be me gone this year.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
Our job is to do what's in the best interest of our country.
You made my argument for me.
My guests and I tackle the issues that really matter, with a sharp take on every story.
I'm hearing it up and down the country. That was a beginning, not an end.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Big reaction to my big opinion. It's all about the RSPCA. It's 200 years old. It's there to protect animals that are being abused and treated badly. Well, I think they've gone beyond their brief. I think they've gone woke, they've gone political. And many of you agree it's an advert in which they are anti-farming and anti-meat. At least that's the perception. Plant-based diet, no chance, says Barry Lewis, a member of GB News. Maureen says the RSPCA are not fit for purpose, haven't been for years. And when they'll put an RSPCA assured sticker on halal meat, you will understand that. RSPCA, we are omnivores. We benefit more from following an omnivore diet. And how about this from Tina? Good evening, Tina. How are you? Tina says, I volunteer for a rescue group. We were called out to dogs which were being treated badly. There were 3 RSPCA who went out and said they would go back in 3 days. In this time, 1 died. Needless to say, the RSPCA were useless. There you go. RSPCA, pro-animal, anti-human is what John says. Look, feelings are running very high. Of course, the RSPCA would argue that they are there to protect animals and that they do their very best to do just that. OK, folks, we've got some breaking news. Let's head over to Aaron Armstrong in our news desk.
Breaking news is that the Israeli military says dozens of Iranian drones are said to be en route towards Israel. It's believed dozens of pilotless aircraft are heading towards Israeli targets. They're equipped with explosives. Now, Israel's defence forces say they are well prepared. They say it will take hours to reach the country. Sirens are set to sound in any threatened areas. Their spokesperson, Rear Admiral Daniel Hagari, says we've prepared for diverse scenarios in advance in order to intercept these launches. We have circles of protection from both the Navy and the Air Force on several layers. If they do enter Israeli airspace, he says, then you will hear sirens and alarms. Wherever these threats enter, we will intercept them. Israel has been on heightened alert ever since an airstrike almost 2 weeks ago on the Iranian consulate in Damascus in Syria. It killed a number of top military targets. Ever since then, Iran has vowed to retaliate. It's been threatening a response. The US has said it would come sooner rather than later. That was Joe Biden speaking yesterday, and now it appears to have been launched towards Israel, which it says is ready for the potential threat.
My thanks to Aaron Armstrong. So this is a developing story. The news broken there by Aaron Armstrong in our newsroom. Iran has launched drones at Israel, and they will arrive in several hours. This is obviously an escalation of what looks to have been a growing conflict over the last few days. Iran has launched a salvo of drones at Israel, according to the Israeli military. They've made a statement. The Israeli military forces have said, we've prepared for diverse scenarios in advance in order to intercept these launches. We have the circles of protection from both the Navy and the Air Force on several layers. These are live pictures from Israel that you're currently watching if you're watching us on GB News. The IDF go on to explain, that's Israel's defence forces, that the unmanned aircraft will take several hours to reach Israel and sirens will sound if any areas are under threat. They went on to say, we're going to try to prevent them from reaching Israeli territory. That is our task. He goes on to say, rather ominously, that if they do enter Israeli airspace, then you will hear sirens and alarms wherever these threats enter, and we will intercept them. That was a spokesperson from the IDF, Rear Admiral Daniel Hagari. So, folks, this is a very serious situation. It is an escalating situation. We're going to talk about Angela Rayner in just a moment, but I'm delighted to say that the guest we booked is the former editor of the Sunday Mirror, who has covered foreign stories extensively. Paul Connew, welcome to the show. Your reaction to this escalation between Iran and Israel, with Iran having sent drones to Israel?
On one level, it's not surprising that Iran's retaliating, but what is surprising, perhaps, is that they're doing it directly from Iran, aimed at Israel, rather than via proxies. And I think that is a surprise. And the interesting thing is going to be, interesting, I say, but dangerous, is how Israel responds. But of course, they've got a very, very sophisticated steel dome system, and how many of these drones get through is open to question. But the next question is, how does Israel react? Does it launch a major counterattack? Would it attack Iran directly? And how will America play this, depending on the scale of the Iranian attack and how many, if any, get through and hit targets within Israel?
Well, indeed, of course, Israel's focus has been Hamas since the October the 7th attacks, almost 6 months ago to the day. But, of course, this is a much more significant player in geopolitical terms, Iran, who are certainly hopeful of developing nuclear weapons at some point. A long-standing foe of the West, of the United States, of the United Kingdom. Could Britain and America get dragged into some kind of conflict here, Paul?
That's quite possible, although the Israelis are pretty well equipped, and I think President Biden would be reluctant, unless this attack starts to get through and cause casualties and damage in Israel. I think he will be issuing condemnation rather than the American fleet, which is in the Red Sea area, launching any attacks on Iran. But I think a lot of analysts were expecting Iran to continue using its proxies, with not a direct attack itself. But I wasn't that surprised, because the humiliation for Iran, in a way, of their consulate being attacked in a different country, and almost certainly by Israel, although Israel has never officially owned up to it, there's no doubt that it was Israel, and killing two very senior generals, it would be a humiliation, for the Iranian public. So it's no surprise that Iran had to react, but doing it directly is the surprise element.
Paul Connew, former editor of the Sunday Mirror, please stay with us. Let's now speak to the Evening Standard's defence editor, Robert Fox. Robert, your reaction to this shocking development in the Middle East, if you're just joining us on the radio or on television, let me bring you up to speed. Iran has launched drones at Israel, which are expected to arrive in several hours. The Israeli military has said we've prepared for diverse scenarios in advance. That if these drones reach Israeli territory, sirens will sound and the drones will be destroyed. Robert Fox, your reaction?
Yes, it's quite a surprise that they have launched a drone attack from Iran. This is what the IDF, the Israel Defense Force, is saying, because it does give a long lead time. The real another scenario would be if behind this they launch ballistic missiles, because then the travel time is just a matter of a few minutes. And there has been some question whether you have a combination of drone and missile as whether they could overwhelm the radars of the aerial defences of the Iron Dome system. Doing it this way, by giving notice, as we heard from the previous speaker, it's high risk for Iran. But to answer a point that has just been raised, I think the proxies are not very keen to get involved in this one on behalf of Iran. Iran has been egging on its pals in the Hezbollah of Lebanon to go on, and they've been launching hundreds of rockets. Rockets are very different, both from drones and from missiles, and they don't want to seem to go much further. In other words, Hezbollah in South Lebanon, and they've had plenty of experience of this, do not want an all-out war with Israel. So this is a problem, and it's very funny. Yes, it is revenge for the attack on the Damascus consulate on the 1st of April, but it's a very high risk. And as I was saying on GB News earlier today, there's a bit of an indication that Iran is overstretched because it now appears to be picking fights or involved in wars and conflicts on 5 different fronts. And we have to see what is going to happen. If one of these explosive drones gets through and hits a major target in Israel, then we are in a completely different ballgame because America will come in.
And how might that manifest itself, Robert Fox, America's involvement?
I think that they will organise attacks on Iranian targets. And I don't rule out, I don't think there'll be a land invasion, but I don't rule out some strategic target inside Iran being taken out by a joint Israeli-American operation.
Briefly, Robert, before I come back to Paul Connew, do Iran have nuclear weapons?
They sort of do, but they're not really highly developed. They're not in a position to prosecute a war, because if they went anywhere near that, I mean, it's only a handful of warheads. If they have that, the retribution would be enormous. And by the way, in doing that, they play into Benjamin Netanyahu's hands, because there's always been a suspicion that for years that he has wanted to engage America in a real strike on Iran before it becomes an effective nuclear military power.
Paul Connew, former editor of the Sunday Mirror, political broadcaster and writer. Can I ask you, what do you think Iran's goals are here with this strike? If you're just joining us, Iran have sent drones to Israel, which the IDF, the Israeli forces, have said they will shoot down. What are Iran playing at? Does it go beyond revenge?
I think at this stage it's as much about domestic politics in Iran, because to be seen to do nothing would obviously enrage the Iranian public. Plus, it would also give some power, to those who oppose the brutal, repressive Iranian regime. But Robert made the strong point that they do have ballistic missiles, non-nuclear ballistic missiles, and if they do follow the drones with those, and that takes it up to an even higher level. My gut feeling is that they won't go that far, but you never know. But picking up again for another point of Robert's, I think Netanyahu, in a sense, as long as these drones don't cause any major casualties in Israel, will be quite pleased in a way, because A, he thinks it'll bring America more strongly on the side, as opposed to the not particularly muted criticism that we've had from President Biden. And also, of course, there's another big domestic crisis in Israel, where Netanyahu, I'm a big supporter of Israel, but not of Netanyahu, who I think is a disaster. And the scale of the response to the appalling Hamas terrorist massacre of innocent Israeli citizens, but no one can call that anything but horrendous and disgusting. And Israel was entitled to respond. But the scale of the response and retribution in terms of civilian carnage is horrific, and almost certainly does constitute a crime against international humanitarian law. And therefore Netanyahu was basically clinging to the leadership even before October the 7th. The failures of Israel's much vaunted defense system in allowing October the 7th to actually happen further undermine his leadership, and he's only clinging on now because the nation, in a sense, always rallies if you're attacked or in a war situation. The temptation or the inclination is to pull together, but that's starting to crumble now. The protests against Netanyahu are gathering pace, and don't forget that before October the 7th, this was a leader facing corruption charges. And many of the reservists who are now fighting in Gaza were, at one point before October the 7th, were talking about refusing to sign up, as it were, because of Netanyahu's attempt to undermine the Israeli judicial system and its independence.
Okay. Paul Connew, thank you so much. Robert Fox, thank you so much. Of course, we'll keep you up to date on this developing story, but if you're just joining us, let me bring you up to speed. Iran has launched drones at Israel. All Israeli forces are on full alert amid this threat. They've said that they will shoot the drones down if they reach Israeli territory. This follows an earlier incident in which Iran seized an Israeli-linked cargo ship with 25 crew on board earlier today. So the situation in the Middle East escalating, and of course this has implications for Israel's stated military aim of eliminating Hamas. Why? Well, because Hamas are supported by Iran. It's a complex situation which we'll be unpicking later on when the papers come in at 10:30. But next up, following his death earlier this week, I'm joined live from the United States by O.J. Simpson's lawyer. Don't go anywhere.
Good evening. Welcome to your latest GB News weather from the Met Office. So it's been a bit of a drier day for most of us, but there has been a few showers around. Low pressure never too far away out towards the north of the UK, but higher pressure down towards the south and the west does bring something briefly more settled. There have been those showers around, and they will continue through much of Saturday evening, pushing in from the west across parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland, and we could even see some snow continuing across the high ground here. Elsewhere, though, generally turning much drier through the evening, with those clear skies allowing temperatures to drop into the single figures, around 7 or 8 degrees across the south, but even lower further north, perhaps some frost in places. So a chilly start across Scotland, Northern England and Northern Ireland, but those showers quickly pushing in from the west again as we go through Sunday morning and into the afternoon. Further south, after a bit of a drier start to the morning, there will be some sunshine through the first part of the day, but some cloud bubbling up as well, and we could see the odd 1 or 2 showers across Wales and into Northern England. Less warm than we saw on Saturday, highs of 14 or 15 in the south and a little bit closer to average further north. Monday starts a widely showery day across the UK. Bands of showers push their way south and eastwards through Monday morning, and then there will be some breaks and some sunnier spells between those showers, but they could be particularly heavy in the north, and a brisk northwesterly wind will make it feel cooler. Showers continue through the first part of next week with temperatures below average, but turning a little milder through the second half of the week.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall? Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
Our job is to do what's in the best interest of our country.
You made my argument for me.
My guest and I tackle the issues that really matter, with a sharp take on every story.
I'm hearing it up and down the country.
That was a beginning, not an end.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. If you're just joining us, let me tell you that in an unprecedented move, Iran has launched upwards of 50 drones in the direction of Israel. Now, the IDF, the Israeli Defense Forces, have said that they are ready to bring down these pilotless aircraft if they reach Israeli territory. Rear Admiral Daniel Hagari says Israel is well prepared for the attack. You can see, if you're joining us on television, that we've got live pictures from Tel Aviv, which is currently peaceful. But 50 to 100 of these pilotless aircraft are headed towards Israel in what is a major escalation in tensions in the Middle East. And I'm being told that airspace in Israel will be closed from 12:30 p.m. tonight. More on that shortly, but lots more to get through in a very busy show. Now, O.J. Simpson, the iconic American footballer and comedy film actor whose career was overshadowed by a trial in which he was acquitted for the murders of his former wife, Nicole Brown, and her friend, Ron Goldman, in 1994, has died at the age of 76. For reaction, I'm now joined by legendary American lawyer and law professor Alan Dershowitz, who has represented celebrity clients such as Mike Tyson, Julian Assange, and former President Donald Trump. Well, his work alongside Johnny Cochran and F. Lee Bailey saw O.J. Simpson walk free following the allegations of murder and that notorious car chase watched by millions around the world. Mr. Dershowitz, welcome to Mark Dolan tonight. Do you mourn the passing of O.J. Simpson?
Well, first, I want to comment. My mind is not on O.J. Simpson right now. My mind is on Israel.
Yeah.
This is a perfect opportunity for England, for the United States, for Israel to bring about regime change in Iran, which would solve virtually all the problems in the Middle East. It would get rid of Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis. It would allow for peace between Israel and the Saudis. It's a perfect opportunity to bring about regime change, which 70% of Iranians want. But do we have the courage to do it? It would be a wise decision. It would be a decision that would have saved Britain so much if they had done that in Germany in the mid-1930s, as Goebbels himself said. So my mind is very much in the Middle East. But let me turn to O.J. Simpson. No, I don't mourn his death. I didn't know him other than a client. I'm like a doctor who treated a patient. I was not his friend. I had little contact with him after the case. He may have been guilty. He may have been innocent. My job was to demonstrate that police had planted evidence against him in an effort to try to enhance the strength of the case. They believed he was guilty, and they were trying to frame what they believed was a guilty man. They poured blood of O.J. Simpson and one of his alleged victims from test tubes onto a sock that they then produced as evidence, but they didn't realize that the blood contained a telltale chemical, EDTA, which is not found in the human body, but is found only in test tubes to prevent coagulation. So they were caught with their pants down. And I think many of the jurors said, look, there's a lot of evidence against Simpson. He may very well be guilty, but we're not going to convict based on police tampering with evidence. And the fact that it was a predominantly black jury, I think, helped that because they were used to evidence planting. It was common against black people, particularly when there were shootings. Suddenly a gun would show up. If there was a shooting of a black person, a gun would show up. It was called a Saturday night special, planted by the police on the defendant to defend themselves. So, you know, this was a case with a mixed legacy. Perhaps a guilty free, better 10 guilty go free than one innocent be confined. But it exposed the depths of divisions racially. It exposed police corruption in Los Angeles. And on balance, the result was good for law enforcement.
Notwithstanding a botch job by prosecutors, is it your personal view that O.J. Simpson did kill his ex-wife?
A lawyer can never disclose that kind of information. I think there was enough evidence to convict him if the evidence had not been tampered with. There was also enough evidence to create a reasonable doubt. He's going to have to make his case before the heavenly court about his actual guilt or innocence. That's not the job of an earthly court. An earthly court's job is to assess the evidence and determine whether, on the basis of admissible, fairly obtained evidence, the case has been proved beyond a reasonable doubt. The jury came to the right verdict, though history may come to a very different verdict.
Well, indeed, you were doing your job and you have a remarkable hit rate in helping those you represent. However, did you have any concerns when O.J. Simpson walked free? Did that bother you?
I always do. I have a policy. I never go to victory parties. I didn't go to the victory case. There are dead people. Look, I would have represented the Goldmans and the Browns if they had called me first. They were entitled to representation. I mourn their deaths. And I commend the Goldmans and the Browns for standing up for the memory of their deceased people. You have to remember, we're professionals, just like you're a professional. When you report on the news, you don't take a position, and lawyers in the same way. But of course, as human beings, we're concerned. But remember, the vast majority of people in Great Britain and America who are charged with crime are guilty. Thank God for that. Would we want to live in a country where the majority of people charged were not guilty? That would be Iran. That would be Russia. That would be North Korea. But in our countries, you have to defend the guilty as zealously as you defend the innocent, especially in so many cases you don't know. You're showing the glove now. I was sitting 2 feet away from him when he tried the glove on, and this was the biggest mistake any lawyer has ever made in my 60 years of practice. Under the law, they could have made him try on the glove previously before showing it to the jury and made a decision only after seeing if it fit. But the arrogant prosecutors decided to do this demonstration in front of the jury. And I was literally sitting there watching the jury reaction when that happened. And I told OJ right after that, you don't have to testify. You've already spoken to the jury. You haven't been cross-examined. And if you testify, they will destroy you on cross-examination, as they did in the civil case when he testified. Unfortunately, he took my advice.
Mr. Dershowitz, a privilege to have you on the show. And when I'm in trouble, I know who to call.
Well, I hope you don't get in trouble. I'd rather not have clients. And let's hope for peace in the Middle East.
Most definitely. Thank you for your contribution to that developing story. If you're just joining us, Iran has launched unmanned aircraft in the direction of Israel. They have sent drones, upwards of 50 unmanned aircraft, headed to Israel. The IDF, the Israeli Defense Forces, have said they're ready for the attack. They will strike down the drones if they reach Israeli territory. We've got live pictures from Tel Aviv as we speak. Currently peaceful, but of course we'll stay across this story, which looks to be a further layer of complexity in what is happening in the Middle East. But next up in my Take at 10, at 10 o'clock, I'll be dealing with the pathetic Harry Potter stars who threw J.K. Rowling under the bus for stating basic biological facts. But next up, we've got Mark Meets and a new development, a new theory about why the Titanic sank. We'll find out next.
Britain's Newsroom. Weekday mornings from 9:30.
Men's mental health. Yeah. Men are starting to talk a lot more.
Yeah.
You've been through a lot of stuff that people don't know about.
Yeah, I mean, the last few years for me have been very, very difficult. People see me on tour, performing, making music, but myself and my wife, we went through 2 miscarriages. Oh. Wow. For us, that was a very devastating time and very difficult to know how to kind of process those emotions. And I guess as a man, I did the thing of bottling up my emotions, and where I feel comfortable to be able to express myself is in the studio, whereas, she had obviously a different reaction to, what happened to us, because not only was it happening to her mentally, psychologically, but it was happening to her physically as well. And I think what something that she really wanted to see from me was that sensitivity and that emotion. And I thought that as a man, being strong was trying to bottle up my emotions and just show her that, no, you know, that I'm being strong for her. But actually being strong is talking about it. And what's happened ever since I've started to talk about it is I've spoken to more men that have experienced baby loss. My wife forced out of me, you know, how do you feel? And I ended up as a mess on the floor. I was exasperating, crying, almost inconsolable. She was just holding me in her arms as we cried together, and we cried together. And I didn't realise I needed that release so badly. Like I said, I've been able to speak to other men, and we've been able to cry together, and they shared their own experiences, which they did similar to me. But actually, you know, as men, I feel like that conversation and that sensitivity and being able to be emotional together.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task. This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Busy show. I'll be dealing with those terrible hypocrites who were so obnoxious to J.K. Rowling, the stars of the Harry Potter films, in my take at 10. But first, Mark meets, and this week new evidence is coming to light about the cause of the sinking of the Titanic. New reports suggest an optical illusion caused by freak weather could have played a role in the tragedy. The Times newspaper share evidence suggesting a mirage could have obscured the massive iceberg that struck the ship, leaving it impossible to spot in time. Of course, this all happened on April the 14th, 1912, when the supposedly unsinkable Titanic and its 2,240 passengers and crew sank into the ocean. Well, to reflect on the greatest maritime tragedy in history and its possible causes, I'm delighted to welcome Titanic historian Shelley Binder, whose great-grandmother and great-uncle mercifully survived the disaster. Shelley, great to have you back on the show. Does this new theory about a mirage have any credibility?
Great to see you again, Mark. Yes, I believe that this is a very well-documented marine anomaly, and it's quite possible that there was a false horizon that was created by extreme conditions that evening, for sure, which effectively lists the horizon and effectively makes the real surface of the sea and the iceberg invisible.
Is there any tangible evidence that the captain of the ship was reckless, or that the crew were trying to break a speed record to cross the Atlantic?
No, I don't believe so. First of all, the Cunard Company line was known for speed, Mauretania, Lusitania, and those ships were really built to be some of the fastest in the world. In fact, they were known to have won the Blue Riband, and that the Titanic really wasn't a contender to win that. She simply was not built for that. She was more built for luxury and also, of course, as an immigrant ship. So, no, my feeling is that, no, they were not trying to speed across the Atlantic. And in fact, you know, they had no chance of actually doing that.
How worried were the captain and crew about icebergs? Was it a known threat, Shelley?
Absolutely, it was a known threat. In fact, Edward Smith took precautions to go in a more southerly route, knowing that this was a possibility during this season. And so he did take precautions to try and avoid that. And also, something that's not often mentioned is that the rules that he followed with regard to the speed that he went was not uncommon. It was well accepted. So I have very solid feelings about Captain Smith. If you look at my great-grandmother's accounts in the newspaper, her feelings about Captain Smith were not so fond. She was obviously not a fan and insinuated that he had, that she could see him when she was in the lifeboat, and that she saw him go into a lifeboat and then get back out, step back on deck, contemplate again, go back in, and so forth. My feeling is that he was taking women into the lifeboat and women and children, and that he was and would not consider saving himself. There's, in my mind, absolutely no scenario I can think of where he would have considered that. That was not his person.
Shelley, I wish we had longer, but of course this breaking story in Israel has used up a lot of our time. We'll definitely get you back. Couple of seconds. Should they build a Titanic 2?
Well, Clive Palmer has tried this numerous times in Australia, as you might know, and it had difficulties with the funding, and it's well thought of in the Titanic community that this simply won't happen.
Okay, well, listen, Shelley, let's do longer next time. We hopefully won't have any geopolitical dramas that interrupt what is a fascinating conversation. Greg will be in touch and we'll definitely get you back on the show. My thanks to the Titanic historian, the one and only Shelley Binder. What a fascinating story that remains. Well, speaking of drama, Iran has launched drones at Israel. Here are live pictures from Tel Aviv in Israel. The IDF have said that they anticipated this attack, that they are ready to strike down what could be 100 drones, unmanned aircraft headed towards Israel in what is clearly an escalation of tensions in the region. What are the implications for peace in the area, for Israel's stated military aim of wiping out Hamas, who, of course, are supported by Iran? And let me tell you that airspace will close in Israel at 12:30 this evening. Of course, you'll get all the information you need. We've got a bulletin coming up, and we'll stay across this for the papers and well beyond the end of this show.
This is your chance to win our biggest prize of the year so far. First, there's a totally tax-free £10,000 in cash for you to spend this summer. Then, we want to send you on a bespoke 7-night small boat cruise for two worth £10,000. Thanks to Variety Cruises, you'll be able to choose from any of their 2025 Greek adventures and discover Greece like never before. And with flights, meals, drinks and excursions included, all you have to do is relax. We'll also give you these terrific travel treats. For another chance to win a prize worth over £20,000, text prize to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB04 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 26th of April. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions.
We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio, and online.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's 10 o'clock on television, on radio and online in the United Kingdom and across the world. This is Mark Dolan Tonight. I'll be dealing with the pathetic Harry Potter stars who threw J.K. Rowling under the bus for stating basic biological facts. As they embrace for a very public photo at the polo, could Harry and Meghan be forced to return to the UK if Harry has his visa revoked? Plus, tomorrow's newspaper front pages and live reaction in the studio from tonight's top pundits. And tonight's developing story, let's hand over to the news and bring you the latest to Aaron Armstrong. Take it away.
Very good evening to you. It's 10 o'clock. I'm Aaron Armstrong. Well, as you have been hearing, Iran has launched dozens of drones and cruise missiles towards Israel, which are expected to arrive within hours. The Israeli military says it's well prepared for the attack, with sirens set to sound in any threatened areas, like its biggest city, Tel Aviv. The country has been on heightened alert ever since an airstrike on the Iranian embassy in Syria last week, which killed a number of top commanders. Tehran holds Israel responsible and has vowed to retaliate. Israel has closed its airspace. The drones are expected to arrive around midnight UK time. Iraq has announced it's doing the same, while Jordan's declared a state of emergency, saying it's ready to shoot down any Iranian aircraft that violates its airspace. Meanwhile, the White House says President Biden's being regularly updated about the situation. He's cut short a trip to Delaware and on his way back to Washington, D.C. to meet national security advisors and members of his cabinet. Now, the US has been trying to de-escalate tension in the region to prevent a wider conflict, although last night President Biden said he expected an Iranian attack on Israel sooner rather than later. His message to Iran was don't. Rishi Sunak says his heart goes out to all those affected by a knife attack at a shopping mall in Sydney that killed 6 people. The assailant injured a number of others, including a 9-month-old baby, before he was challenged by a member of the public. The baby remains in critical condition. The child's mother, named as the 38-year-old Ash Good, died in hospital. The assailant was eventually shot dead by police. They say it was not terror-related. Tim Loughton's become the latest Tory MP to say he'll stand down at the next general election. The backbencher, who represents East Worthing and Shoreham, served as Children's Minister in David Cameron's government. He said it was wiser to leave 5 minutes too soon than to continue for 5 years too long. He is the latest of 64 Conservative MPs to announce they're either standing down or not seeking re-election. A man who died following a stabbing in Croydon yesterday has been named as the 22-year-old Ricard Salou Siafa. Met police officers responded to the scene at Fellmonger's Yard at 6 o'clock last night. Despite efforts from members of the public and the emergency services, he died at the scene. A 20-year-old man was arrested on suspicion of murder and he remains in custody. 9 people have been arrested on suspicion of committing public order offences during demonstrations in central London. Tens of thousands of pro-Palestinian protesters gathered in Westminster earlier to call for a ceasefire in Gaza and to urge the government to stop selling arms to Israel. A counter-demonstration against what organisers are calling anti-Israel hate also took place in the area. The suspects remain in custody. For more on all of our stories, including our developing news concerning those attacks on Israel, you can scan the QR code on your screen for GB News alerts or go to our website for more. Now, it's back to Mark.
Welcome to Mark Dolan tonight. More on that unprecedented attack from Iran on Israel. Upwards of 50 unmanned drones sent to Israel in what is a major escalation of tensions in the Middle East. What are the implications for Israel's stated aim of wiping out Hamas, who are supported by Iran? It's a hot mess in the Middle East, and we'll bring you more reaction shortly, including with tomorrow's papers at 10:30. Also tonight, as they embrace for a photo at the Polo, could Harry and Meghan be forced to return to the UK if Harry has his visa revoked? I'll be asking the Queen of US Royal Reporting, Kinsey Schofield, about the Prince's growing legal troubles. Plus, tomorrow's newspaper front pages, as I said, and live reaction from my top pundits this evening. We've pushed out the boat. Anarchist and author Dr. Lisa McKenzie, former government advisor Claire Pearsall, and radio legend Mike Reid. So, a packed hour, more on Israel shortly, and those papers are coming. But first, a bit of showbiz and my take at 10. We're getting to the point where the creation of Harry Potter, which has generated £20 billion worth of box office receipts, merchandise and book sales, and which managed to get a generation of young people reading, it's just possible that all of that isn't even J.K. Rowling's biggest achievement. This is a remarkable woman who struggled as a single mother, suffered domestic abuse, and whose book idea for a little wizard with a scar on his forehead was rejected by no less than 12 publishers. She writes the first manuscript, Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, on a tiny table at the Elephant House Cafe in Edinburgh, on a basic notebook, which is now a priceless document and destined for a museum. Her fantasy world of spells and sorcery was in stark contrast to her real-life privations. In the writing of those books, she created a magical escape for herself and her billions of readers. Like Dickens, Shakespeare and Austen, she will be read forever. It doesn't stop at the books and movies. There's a theme park. Tea towels, T-shirts, pens, pencils, rubbers. There are Harry Potter action figures, board games, and inevitably there is Harry Potter Lego. Of course there is. J.K. Rowling was an ordinary woman with an extraordinary talent, which, like a magic carpet, has lifted her into the creative and financial stratosphere. And yet, and yet, and yet. Like the fearless and hilarious comedians Ricky Gervais and Dave Chappelle in the United States, what's most admirable about this woman is that she's used her wealth and her platform to call out the madness of extreme transgender ideology. This week, the shocking Cass review confirmed what many of us have been saying for a long time and were called bigots for even mentioning, that the transitioning of children is deeply harmful for their bodies and their mental health. It is wrong. Whilst Rowling has always been the first to argue that a grown adult should be able to identify by ever which gender they seek to have, and they should receive respect, dignity, love and support, I completely agree. But none of that should come at the expense of women's hard-won sex-based rights. Female-only changing rooms, female-only toilets, women's sports, hospital wards, where there is no place for a biological man. Not long ago, Isla Bryson, real name Adam Graham, a vile double rapist, was accommodated in a female prison. I rest my case. Rowling has been criticised for her so-called views, her opinions on gender. These aren't views. They're not opinions. These are facts. There are two sexes, male and female, the end. Rowling gets described as gender critical. Well, let me correct you there. She is gender factual, which is why the vile death and rape threats on Rowling, our greatest living author, are so appalling. But as a woman who has suffered domestic abuse in her own life, this literary hero is in no mood to put up with abuse from angry men in dresses, and she gives as good as she gets. She slays them like dragons every day on social media. This feminist icon has pushed back on what at times feels like a men's rights movement, with blokes all over again bullying, scaring, controlling and dominating women. Misogyny, sexism, the story of history, this time dressed up in lipstick and high heels. But I'm most offended by the pathetic child actors in the Harry Potter films, who wasted no time in throwing a woman who gave them their careers, fame and riches under the bus. Harry Potter leading actor Daniel Radcliffe, who is no intellectual wizard, let me tell you, apologised to any Harry Potter fans who felt that their experience of the books has been tarnished or diminished by Rowling's stance. I'd like to do a spell and turn him into a cat. What a pussy. Workman-like actor turned property tycoon, thanks to the bountiful millions accrued from Rowling's work, Rupert Grint reiterated the nonsensical mantra that trans women are women and trans men are men, a cult-like statement that even key figures in the Labour Party, such as Wes Streeting, are now quietly abandoning. And what about Hermione Granger herself, actress Emma Watson, who dismissed Rowling's brave and honest stance by saying the following. She said, "Trans people are who they say they are and deserve to live their lives without being constantly questioned or told they aren't who they say they are." Well, who is Emma Watson? A budding thespian who won the showbiz lottery the day she was chosen by Rowling to play Hermione Granger. If it wasn't for J.K. Rowling, at best she'd be a jobbing actor, pulling pints in the Old Vic, maybe playing a dead body in Casualty, or more likely playing out a real-life role, tossing burgers at her local McDonald's. She's had her chips. Following this week's Cass review, which highlighted the worst excesses of this new religion, it's clear that so-called trans ideology, which denies biological sex, is in retreat. But only thanks to heroes like Rowling, who history will judge not only as a great author, but as a great woman too. She has silenced her idiot critics with just one wave of her magic wand. Your reaction, gbnews.com/your say. Let's hear from tonight's top pundits, former government advisor Claire Pearsall, ex-BBC radio DJ Mike Reid, and anarchist and author Dr. Lisa Mackenzie. Dr. Lisa, let me start with you. Perhaps these young actors and actresses simply want to be more inclusive in a society which is ever-changing.
Yeah, perhaps that's the case. I mean, you know, I'm inclusive. I think, you know, people have a right to sort of say who they are and what they want, you know, how they want to be determined. I also think that people's rights should be protected as well. And if I think about the sort of the actors that we're thinking about, I think it's quite standard for their generation. They're very privileged people. So remember, you know, they don't have to get down and dirty with the rest of us. They don't have to go and have a job. They don't have to live in society with the rest of us. So these are very, very privileged people who can hold very, very privileged ideas about the world that don't really ever have to be tested. And for me, I think that's what the point is here, is that for any woman who's, you know, going about their daily business, I'm not a victim, but we have to know that women are more likely to be on the other end of violence from men. And as a woman, you know that throughout your life. When you're walking down the street, you hear footsteps. You know, women think the worst because that's what can happen. And I think these very, very privileged people who are not living in society get these very, very privileged and not tested views. And I would say that's what my opinion of this is.
Yes, I mean, that's the point, Claire Pearsall. Emma Watson hasn't been trying to change her bra in a Primark with a couple of blokes in the cubicle next to her.
Well, that's right. And I don't think there's much more to add than they are incredibly privileged. They aren't going to have to deal with the kind of situations that most women are. But I think that J.K. Rowling is one of probably the bravest women I have heard on this subject. She doesn't shy away from debates. She takes people on social media. She is thoroughly unapologetic for her views. And she isn't transphobic. And I think that insult is thrown at her frequently. She isn't. She has said that people can identify and they can go and live their lives whatever they wish. However, women's hard-fought rights should be respected and should be kept as such. And I don't think that is a bad stance to take. And the whole nature of this debate is so incredibly toxic. But I don't like being told by some incredibly wealthy young people that my view, which happens to be the same as J.K. Rowling's, is wrong. Why do they have that right? Why can they not come and debate this subject properly? They hide behind their social media, they hide behind the walls and their gates of their very expensive houses, and they won't come out and actually stand up for what it is they believe. So they make these comments, they rush off, and they leave the rest of us to pick up the pieces.
Well, Mike Reid, perhaps these young actors are standing up for what they believe. They are the younger generation. They've observed that the world has changed, that some people have gender dysphoria, which means that they feel they're in the wrong body. Perhaps Emma Watson, Rupert Grint, Daniel Radcliffe are showing empathy to people who were born female and want to be male or vice versa, standing up for a marginalised group in society.
Yeah, I think the media will go to them for quotes rather than them maybe stepping forward. The media will immediately go to the obvious people to go to for quotes. And now, of course, anyone could come out as anything and anyone can have their opinion. It's just that people are so vociferous against anyone that doesn't have the same opinion as them. We can all have our own opinions. And now you can come out as anything. But back in the day, I mean, if you take Olympians like the Polish Olympian Stella Walsh, who lived until almost 70 as a woman, won Olympic medals as a woman, shot in an underground car park in the States, and they discovered in the autopsy she had all the bits a woman didn't ought to have. So you could live your entire life like that. Then now you're forced to come out, you're forced to do things. To be honest, I'm worried about trams people, Mark, the people that get on trams. They're a worry for me.
We've got a tram in Nottingham.
I mean, those people, they're going nowhere, are they, the trams people?
Well, we've got a tram in Nottingham, and you should be worried about everybody on that.
Absolutely.
It's like the Wild West on Nottingham trams.
Listen, I know we've
and you get trolls on
We've got lots of viewers and listeners in Nottingham, and what a city it is, let me tell you. As you well know, Lisa
It's
McKenzie,
a bankrupt city.
Is that right?
Yeah.
But not morally, and I love the people. That's Labour local authorities for you. Listen, careful, bit of politics. Coming up, as they embrace for a photo at the Polo, could Harry and Meghan be forced to return to the UK if Harry has his visa revoked? Plus, we'll be conducting a Mark Dolan Tonight People's Poll. Should Harry Potter actors Daniel Radcliffe and Emma Watson apologise to J.K. Rowling? The results are in. We shall reveal all next.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
TfL bosses have come under fire after banning an advert... Oh, God. They've banned an advert for a comedy show because it had a hot dog on it, because that supposedly promotes obesity.
The comedian Ed Gamble has swapped the image of the fast food favourite in favour of a cucumber instead. And there's the cucumber on the plate.
So is the UK turning into a nanny state? Let's talk to former presenter of Fat Families, Steve Miller, and nutritionist Olivia Parry. Good to see you both this morning. Olivia, it's a comedy show. He's not promoting eating hot dogs, is he? Is this just a load of nonsense?
The thing is, we have a huge problem with overweight and obesity in this country. We're fourth in Europe. It's big business. Advertising for food companies is big business. They make so much money. You just have to switch on primetime TV to watch, food after food advertisements. And it's for the youngsters as well, who don't have the nutritional education. We're not taught cookery in school anymore. People go to college and to university, they don't know how to cook.
But
and it leads
forgive me for jumping in, Olivia. Forgive me for jumping in, but the whole point with this is it's an advert for a comedy show.
Yes, I know, but this is a wider issue.
I think it's a load of old tosh, to be quite honest with you. It's a hot dog. In fact, I wish they'd have put onions on the hot dog. A bit of what you fancy won't hurt you. You should eat 80-20 anyway. We talk about a nanny state. I actually think, arguably, we're becoming an authoritarian state. Opinions banned. Comedy banned. The England flag banned. It's like we've got to wear a virtual muzzle.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall? Let's find out together. For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Well, if you're just joining us, Iran has launched drones at Israel, according to the Israeli Defense Forces. Here are live pictures from Tel Aviv in Israel. The Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, has convened an emergency war cabinet. Upwards of 50 of these unmanned aircraft are headed in the direction of Israel. The IDF have said that they're ready for this attack. They will strike down any of these aircraft should they enter Israeli space. This is thought to be a revenge attack in relation to Israel's attack on the Syrian embassy in April. But the plot thickens because, of course, as Israel pursues its stated aim of wiping out Hamas, Israel is engaged, an interested party, as they are supportive of Hamas, both financially and militarily, as well as diplomatically. So this story is a developing one, and the plot thickens in the Middle East, which is why we are going to have a special GB News programme dedicated to this story, which I'll be presenting live from midnight tonight. So do stay with us after Headliners for a GB News special, Israel under attack. Meanwhile, let's get to some other big stories of the day. Don't forget, let me tell you, that the papers are on their way, but it's time now for US News with the Queen of American showbiz, royal and political reporting, Kinsey Schofield. Kinsey, the story about Israel has rather squeezed this slot, so I'll crack straight on with it. A rather happy photo of Harry and Meghan loved up in Miami. This seems to be the romance that won't die.
Yeah, Harry and Meghan were seen on Friday at the Royal Salute Polo Challenge at the Grand Champion Polo Club in Wellington. It's been previously reported that Meghan hired Adele's stylist to work on her new look, and I think that was on clear display this week in Florida. But yeah, there were Netflix cameras in tow. These are two individuals that are continuing to pursue the entertainment world. I think basically, essentially, through more reality television. Meghan is going to give us a new TV show about gardening and friendship and entertainment, while Prince Harry is doing a new polo-themed show. And I think after weeks of will they, won't they reconciliation debate spurred by multiple cancer revelations, the announcement of these two new reality shows have solidified in my mind that there is no chance for a reconciliation between Prince Harry and his brother anytime soon. Prince William does not want to be a part of reality TV or jeopardize his family's privacy.
However, you could argue with the announcement of these two Netflix shows that Harry and Meghan are proving their critics wrong. The fact that they were dumped by Spotify was well reported, but it seems that as producers, they're still in demand, at least on Netflix.
They're in demand because Netflix wants what they had, their first and only commercial success, which is Harry and Meghan. They're not behind the scenes like they told us they were going to be going forward. This is reality television. This is watching Meghan Markle in the kitchen. This is watching Meghan Markle garden. This is watching Harry at a polo event. This is reality TV. So I don't think they're proving their critics wrong. I think that Netflix is showing us they want a very specific take from Harry and Meghan, and it's what we're getting. It's them in front of the cameras.
What did you make of that photograph? For me, it's the royal picture of the day, the embrace at the polo. It reminds me of Diana and Charles at the polo back in the day. Is this a real love story? Do you think that they're still hot for each other?
I'm sure they're still hot for each other. I think that Meghan looked beautiful, but I also think that you see what these reality shows are not just a way for Harry and Meghan to make money. They have to change perception. They're not very likable in the States. And I know they're not very likable in the UK. This is a tool that they're using to change people's perception of them. And that kiss, to me, is a very choreographed photo that is beautiful, but seems like there's an ulterior motive there.
Can we talk about the couple's political ambitions? Archwell, their non-profit organisation, is going to be tackling election misinformation. Are Harry and Meghan really the arbiters of truth?
Yes, sir. They've partnered with anti-Trumper Miles Taylor of the Future Us to help voters against disinformation. And one of the things that they're focused on is making sure Americans can decipher what's real and what is like deep fake, what is AI generated. My argument would be Prince Harry literally sat on a phone call with somebody he thought was Greta Thunberg for half an hour discussing American politics and his exit from the British royal family. They were actually Russian pranksters. That streamed on YouTube, not necessarily who I go to for my disinformation guide.
Yeah, most definitely. Listen, Kinsey, I wish we had longer, but we've got to tackle this Israel story. We'll see you in a week's time. If you're just joining us on GB News, on the radio, or watching online, or via your TV, let me tell you that this is a breaking story, and of course you'll have heard about it in our bulletin with Aaron Armstrong. Iran has launched upwards of 50 unmanned aircraft in the direction of Israel. Here are live pictures of Tel Aviv in Israel, currently peaceful, but they're expecting between 50 and 100 of these drones, very powerful devices, heading towards Israel. This is a diplomatic moment. It's a military moment. And, of course, it complicates the current issues in the Middle East with regards to Israel's stated aim of wiping out Hamas. Of course, Iran support Hamas as well. The plot thickens. What are the implications? Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel, a controversial figure in some quarters, has held an emergency cabinet meeting in response to this attack. They say they'll strike down the drones. Well, we're going to bring you a GB News special. After Headliners, I'll be on air in a special programme from midnight till 1 a.m. We'll be speaking to top experts from around the world. Greg's looking after it, so I promise you it will be a worthy watch. Lots more to come, including tomorrow's papers and full pundit reaction. Don't go anywhere.
Good evening. Welcome to our latest GB News weather from the Met Office. So it's been a bit of a drier day for most of us, but there has been a few showers around. Low pressure never too far away out towards the north of the UK, but higher pressure down towards the south and the west does bring something briefly more settled. There have been those showers around and they will continue through much of Saturday evening, pushing in from the west across parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland, and we could even see some snow continuing across the high ground here. Elsewhere though, generally turning much drier through the evening, with those clear skies allowing temperatures to drop into the single figures, around 7 or 8 degrees across the south, but even lower further north, perhaps some frost in places. So a chilly start across Scotland, Northern England and Northern Ireland, but those showers quickly pushing in from the west again as we go through Sunday morning and into the afternoon. Further south, after a bit of a drier start to the morning, there will be some sunshine through the first part of the day, but some cloud bubbling up as well, and we could see the odd 1 or 2 showers across Wales and into Northern England. Less warm than we saw on Saturday, highs of 14 or 15 in the south and a little bit closer to average further north. Monday starts a widely showery day across the UK. Bands of showers push their way south and eastwards through Monday morning, and then there will be some breaks and some sunnier spells between those showers, but they could be particularly heavy in the north, and a brisk northwesterly wind will make it feel cooler. Showers continue through the first part of next week with temperatures below average, but turning a little milder through the second half of the week.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
I'm Emily Carver. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
If you're just joining us, serious developments in the Middle East as Iran launch an unmanned air attack on Israel. That's right, they've sent upwards of 50 drones in the direction of Israel. Now, the IDF, who are the Israeli Special Forces, the Defense Forces, have said they're ready for this attack. They will strike down these drones as and when they enter Israeli airspace. But clearly it adds to what is already a very complex issue in the Middle East. We're going to do a special show about it. We've got a GB News special at midnight with a range of experts reacting to this escalation of tensions in the Middle East. How will Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel, react? What are Iran's motivations in launching this strike? Could America get drawn into the conflict? And what does this mean for Israel's stated aim of wiping out Hamas, who are, of course, supported by Iran? So that is a GB News special, Israel under attack. I'll be presenting that from midnight, straight after headliners. But let's get reaction now from our home and security editor, Mark White. Mark, do we know why Iran have launched this strike on Israel?
Well, of course, the strike is in response to that attack, which killed a number of generals from the Revolutionary Guards and diplomats on that Damascus compound linked to the Iranian embassy in Damascus last month. And Iran vowed revenge, and that is what is unfolding here. But it's unfolding in a very significant way that I think has taken a lot of people by surprise, because Iran, through back channels, apparently had been telling the Americans that their response would be measured. But instead, what we're seeing is unprecedented, a direct assault launched from Iran involving drones and, according to Israeli TV, also cruise missiles. Up to 100 of these drones and cruise missiles being launched from Iran towards Israel. Now, we're told that they are due, the drones at least, to arrive in Israel around about 2 a.m. local time. That would be midnight our time. Israel, of course, has at its disposal very significant defence systems. I saw them for myself when I was out in Israel after the 7th of October terrorist attacks. They have got their Iron Dome missile defence system, but in addition to that, of course, they have lots of defences in the form of their combat jets, which are up and patrolling around Israel tonight, and also, of course, they have naval assets in the region as well that are able to shoot down hostile missiles and drones coming towards Israeli territory. But make no mistake, this is a very significant and dangerous moment. We've had a lot of dangerous moments since those attacks on the 7th of October, but this by far is the most significant development.
Mark White, thank you so much for joining us, our home and security editor. For more on this, we're going to have a GB News special, which I'll be presenting, Israel under attack, after headliners from midnight until 1 o'clock. We'll speak to experts from around the world. How do Israel react to this? What are the implications for their war against Hamas? Could America and the United Kingdom, could the Western allies get sucked into this growing Middle East conflict? So that is a GB News special from midnight. Better late than never. Tomorrow's papers. And Fleet Street haven't quite picked up the story just yet. They've gone to press a little early, but the Observer, at-risk children farmed out to legal private care homes, and no terror link found in stabbing rampage in Sydney, Australia. Mail on Sunday. From the paper that broke the story, a new sensation, dramatic intervention by Labour deputy's ex-advisor piles more pressure on her to finally come clean. So here's the headline. She is lying. Rayner aide tells police. An extraordinary story. Angela Rayner was tonight facing mounting pressure over her two homes row after one of her former aides told police that she had not told the truth about her real home. This is Matt Finnegan, who's Angela Rayner's former chief advisor, who's given a statement to Greater Manchester Police in which he states that her actual home was with her then husband, not at the former council house where she was registered on the electoral roll. So there you go, somebody formerly very close to Angela Rayner saying that she has lied. I told you that story's not going away, and I'll get reaction from my pundits shortly. Sunday Express, massacre in the mall, 6 dead in Sydney stabbing horror. And far-left plot to hijack Labour. Labour is facing a vicious civil war that could kill off Sir Keir Starmer's hopes of a landslide election victory. Left-wingers are poised to launch a bid for the deputy leadership if Angela Rayner is forced to quit over her property dealings. The Independent, mother stabbed to death trying to save baby from Sydney mall knife rampage. A truly horrific story for which there are no words. Ukrainians granted sanctuary in Britain, abused by gangsters is the other headline. Sunday Telegraph, PM attacks complete overreach of ECHR judges. Sunak, the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, condemns illegitimate climate decision on the eve of a vote on Rwanda flights. Also, Sadiq Khan committed to pay per mile charges is the other headline in relation to the London mayor. Sunday Mirror now, trolled by her own family. Fury at Meghan Bro's sick YouTube vids. The Duchess of Sussex's brother has been blasted for running a vile new campaign of abuse against her on his own YouTube channel. That, of course, is Thomas Markle Jr. Last but not least, Daily Star Sunday. Mutts and moggies are getting square eyes. My name's Fido and I'm a telly addict. If your pet likes to watch the box, just be careful it doesn't get square-eyed. That's because as many as 3 out of 10 cats and dogs are hooked on TV. Well, I hope It's GB News. I hope it's Mark Dolan tonight. Don't forget, at midnight after Headliners, we will present a special GB News special, Israel Under Attack. I'll be at the helm, speaking to leading experts around the world about the implications of this developing story. This is unmanned aircraft, upwards of 50 drones that have been launched by Iran on Israel and are expected to be shot down if and when they reach Israeli territory. So it's a serious story. Things are hotting up in the Middle East. That is a GB News special from midnight. But let's get reaction to tomorrow's front pages with my top pundits, anarchist and author Dr. Lisa McKenzie, former government advisor Claire Pearsall, and BBC radio legend Mike Reid. Folks, lots of stories to get through, but look, we've got to start with this one, Mike Reid, and it is a big, big concern for Sir Keir Starmer. She is lying. Rayner aide tells police. This is a story that's not going anywhere.
No, it's not. Well, as you know, Magna Carta said, you know, if it's on social media, then it must be true.
That's exactly
That's
right.
what Magna Carta said.
There are references to Twitter on the Magna Carta, aren't there?
There are, of course, yeah. And also, I mean, what happened to the innocent until proven guilty, and then when you are proven innocent, you're still probably guilty.
I know.
You know, so...
trial by media, is that your concern about Angela Rayner?
It were about everything. That people will not wait until there is a verdict. Yeah. I mean, you know, her aide has just said she's lying. So then we all think, oh, she's lying because her aide said so. And then someone else said, no, she's telling the truth. Oh, well, someone else said she's telling the truth. Why don't we wait until the end of the ride rather than getting on the roller coaster and doing the whole roller coaster ride? Wait until there's a verdict.
Well, that was something that we were going to discuss before this Israel story broke, Lisa McKenzie. Do you think that Angela Rayner should step down until this investigation by the police is concluded?
To be honest, I'm not that interested whether she steps down or not. And regarding, I suppose, this trial by media, what about trial by her own values and ethics? She comes out with this trot constantly that she's a working class woman, she understands working class issues, and then she takes a council house from the council, she buys it, I have no problem with that, and then she sells it and she makes £48,000 profit. The council has lost that council house for any future family that needs it, and my goodness, the people need housing now. So I think Angela Rayner is guilty of hypocrisy and of being a class traitor.
Well, there you go. I mean, that's certainly a wider political issue, and some would accuse Angela Rayner of double standards. She's also been quite critical of the Right to Buy scheme, saying she'd like to change it, even though she has profited. Yes. But many would argue that the big story is whether or not she misled the authorities about where she was living 10 years ago. She is lying, Rayner aide tells police. If you're Keir Starmer right now, you're really you're sweating over this issue, aren't you? It's a major political headache.
It absolutely is, because Angela Rayner, being the de facto deputy shadow leader of the Labour Party, she is number 2 to Sir Keir Starmer. He really needs her because she brings that working class girl sort of ethos to somebody who's not very working class.
She is.
Absolutely.
She's John Prescott in a ginger wig. Is that fair to say?
She's John Prescott.
I don't want to upset John Prescott in any way because he's got a mean right hook. So there are some real issues here. But I think one of the biggest issues is the rank hypocrisy of Angela Rayner, who called for pretty much every single Tory to be sacked, resign, lose their job, demanding information. So you can't have it all ways. You can't demand that everybody else does it, but you can keep stum. And she's not been around on the media for some considerable period of time. I think Sir Keir Starmer really now needs to put out some kind of statement, make some action, do something, because at the moment he just looks like he's hiding behind Angela Rayner, who is just silent and hiding herself.
And
so it's a very strange situation.
Is it going to create a bit of a civil war within the Labour Party, where people lining up to say, I fancy her job? Yeah. So this is... It's
definitely. And the party is split, isn't it, between, in a sense, the likes of Keir Starmer and the likes of Angela Rayner. There is an ideological divide there, with Rayner particularly representing the left of the party. party. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, absolutely. And you're going to see, I think, more of those, more to the left, the more Corbyn-era MPs who are going to rally round. So as you've seen in the Conservative Party, where you've had different factions fighting over who becomes leader, I think the Labour Party are now going to go through something very, very similar, with the more left, the Corbynistas coming forward to say, we need to be able to get our voices heard, so we need to be able to take over that agenda and push their candidate forward.
I don't think the Corbynistas would ever support Angela Rayner.
No. What I mean is they want her replaced.
Now, why do they hate? Because when I mentioned that she represents the left of the party, I didn't mention Corbynistas because they're like the ERG of the Labour Party.
Yes, they are. Yeah,
they're in their own bubble.
They hate her.
Why don't they like Angela Rayner?
I suppose because what they do is they think that she should have been on their side, and she never was. You know, when she was Education Secretary, she came out with this thing about white working class boys. That was the first time I realised how much they disliked her, because they hated the fact that she said this thing about white working class boys not going to university and them being a source of inequality. And I remember the Corbyn left absolutely hated her and went for her in the same way as they hate Wes Streeting as well. So I don't think she's going to be getting any support, actually, from the left of the party.
No, she's not. What I mean is they will desperately look to replace her with somebody more of their thinking, because they feel very betrayed by the likes of Angela Rayner, as you've just said. So what they're going to do is circling their wagons to be able to get their candidate into a position should Angela Rayner be removed from it, because they need to be able to have that power.
Will it affect the poll ratings at all or not? Will it shake the party enough or not?
Well, you have to wonder. Front page of the Sunday Express, Claire, far left plot to hijack Labour, as intimated by Mike and by Lisa. This could be quite destabilising for Keir Starmer. What does he do? Because, I mean, I'm puzzled by this story. Clearly, there's a police investigation now, and justice needs to, have its due process. But it appears she certainly argued, Angela Rayner, that she's received legal advice that is very clear that she did not commit any crimes. She did everything right and proper, except that she hasn't shown that advice to her leader, Keir Starmer, and he hasn't asked to see it. This is a pantomime, isn't it?
It is. If you were the former prosecutor, then you would look to have the evidence put in front of you. If you are of a legal background, you would want to see it. Now, the Labour Party's argument is that Angela Rayner has shown it to Sir Keir Starmer's office, and they are content. Now, whether, because I have a
Was
nasty...
he in the office when
I have a
they were
nasty
shown?
suspicion that it's going through Sue Gray, which is going to make people very, very
former top civil servant.
Former top civil servant, who is now Chief of Staff, who looks to be bringing everybody together to form a government. That's what she would hope for. And I have a nasty feeling that perhaps the evidence is coming from her, and we are seeing that kind of spin operation.
Do you think that Iran might save her? because obviously
only if she goes and lives there, I think.
Yeah, but I don't think she would. But
well, of course, it's a big story which could knock knock this drama off the front pages.
Yeah.
I mean, the other thought I have. Sorry to linger on this with you, Claire, but you've got the inside track in Westminster. It's my interpretation, it's my instinct that Angela Rayner is toast at this point. I mean, how long can she cling on in this role as this drama? Because the police investigation, that could go on for months, couldn't it?
Yeah,
I'm not sure that's tenable for Sir Keir Starmer.
I don't think it is, but he's in a really difficult position because people are going to scream, you're only getting rid of her because she's a working-class woman and we need women in the Labour Party, strong women to come forward. I think he's really stuck, and the fact that he is stuck to the same line the entire way through, that she is innocent and has done nothing wrong.
Keir Starmer has painted himself into a corner, not for the first time in his political career.
No, absolutely not, and he will regret this.
The Labour Party might say, don't get rid of her, she's a working-class woman. I'm a working-class woman, and I'm not saying that about her.
OK, well, there you go. Listen, lots more to come, more front pages. Plus, if you're just joining us, Iran has launched a drone attack on Israel. Over 50 unmanned aircraft have been launched in the direction of Israel, expected to arrive in the hours ahead, which is why we're going to do a very special GB News programme all about it at midnight. Israel under attack. I'll be presenting that. We've booked loads of experts to react to this massive geopolitical story. Plus, more on it after the break, and more front pages and more top stories. Don't go anywhere.
Britain's newsroom, weekday mornings from 9:30.
It's a remarkable story, isn't it?
Amazing.
Extraordinary. And also, she was unflappable, apparently,
Yeah.
the Princess Royal.
She's
just
brilliant.
refused to get out of the car and said, I'm not going anywhere. Extraordinary. Well, Jim Beaton was awarded the George Cross for protecting the Princess, and delighted to say joins us now, along with the former head of Royalty Protection, Di Davis. Jim, you won't remember, but I met you some time ago at the Imperial War Museum when Princess Anne was opening an exhibition to do with the George Cross, and you were there reunited with her. And you told me then what great admiration you had for the Princess, cool under fire, but you didn't do so badly yourself.
It was probably my job. And also, I had a wee bit of police training, not very much, but a little bit, whereas Princess Anne had nothing. And yet, the way she displayed it, you would have thought she'd been highly trained to deal with any type of that situation.
Even though you'd had some training, you took 3 bullets for the Princess. You effectively stood between her and a deranged gunman.
Well, I was supposed to be a protection officer, really, so I just tried to fuddle about. You must remember that back in 1974, there was no communication, and we were extremely lucky that Michael Hills, who was outside Clarence House and nearby, had got one of the fast police radios, or radios on his shoulder, so he was able to send a message out. Otherwise, we would have just been relying on the good old public to phone in and say there's something happening.
Yeah.
So times have changed drastically.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Nigel Farage, and this is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the direction of Israel. Israel have said they will shoot them down, but it's obviously a major escalation. Let's get reaction now from former British Army Commander Richard Kemp. Mr. Kemp, thank you so much for joining us. Your reaction to this strike?
Well, I think it was entirely expected since the 1st of April, when Israel carried out an attack on Iranian Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps commanders in Damascus. Who were planning attacks against Israel. And since then, Iran threatened retaliation, and the tension has been building. I'm in Israel now, and life has gone on as normal, but the IDF has been working very hard, I think, including calling up reservists to man air defense systems. So I think Israel is ready for this attack. And you know, I would expect they will intercept at least a significant number of the drones before they come into Israeli airspace, but some may well, of course, get through.
Iran know that Israel will be prepared for this attack. Is the strike symbolic rather than strategic, Mr. Kemp?
I wouldn't say it's symbolic. I think they've launched 100 drones is the latest estimate from the Israeli Defense Force, and possibly already have maybe launched cruise missiles as well, perhaps time to land either before or after the drones. There's also reports of potentially of drones being launched by the Houthis in Yemen. So it seems rather more than just a symbolic attack. It seems like an attack designed, if those reports are correct, designed to overwhelm the Israelis' air defense systems.
And Mr. Kemp, if Israel are not able to intercept those drones, as you mentioned, 50 to 100 is what's being estimated at the moment. If some get through, how much damage can they do?
Well, they can be pretty severe. I mean, the drones can be accurately targeted. We've seen this same type of drone, Iranian-provided drones, we've seen doing significant damage to Kiev, where they've been supplied to the Russians and used for attacks on civilian premises there. So they can do a lot of damage. It depends on the target they hit, of course, and it depends on the time of day, if whether a building is occupied or not. But they can certainly do severe damage.
Mr. Kemp, I do hope perhaps we'll be able to catch up with you later this evening in our GB News special Israel Under Attack. My thanks to former British Army Commander Richard Kemp. We will be bringing you a special show at midnight after headliners. I'll be presenting. Those are live pictures now of Tel Aviv in Israel, following the news that Iran has launched in the direction of 100 drones, some of which, as we've just heard from Richard Kemp, could actually reach their target. What are the implications? What will the reaction be of the Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu? Could the West get dragged into this? All of that and much more in a GB News special from midnight. I'll be presenting straight after headliners. OK, folks, I think the clock is against us. How long do we have? Just a few seconds. It remains for me to thank my fantastic pundits tonight. We would have had more airtime except for that breaking Israel story. The brilliant Claire Pearsall, Mike Reed and Dr. Lisa McKenzie. Do come back soon, folks. Next up, we got some weather. You got headliners, and I'll be presenting a GB News special, Israel Under Attack, in an hour from now. Do join us.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening, welcome to your latest GB News weather from the Met Office. So it's been a bit of a drier day for most of us, but there has been a few showers around. Low pressure never too far away out towards the north of the UK, but higher pressure down towards the south and the west does bring something briefly more settled. There have been those showers around and they will continue through much of Saturday evening, pushing in from the west across parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland, and we could even see some snow continuing across the high ground here. Elsewhere though, generally turning much drier through the evening, with those clear skies allowing temperatures to drop into the single figures, around 7 or 8 degrees across the south, but even lower further north, perhaps some frost in places. So a chilly start across Scotland, Northern England and Northern Ireland, but those showers quickly pushing in from the west again as we go through Sunday morning and into the afternoon. Further south, after a bit of a drier start to the morning, there will be some sunshine through the first part of the day, but some cloud bubbling up as well, and we could see the odd 1 or 2 showers across Wales and into Northern England. Less warm than we saw on Saturday, highs of 14 or 15 in the south and a little bit closer to average further north. Monday starts a widely showery day across the UK. Bands of showers push their way south and eastwards through Monday morning, and then there will be some breaks and some sunnier spells between those showers, but they could be particularly heavy in the north, and a brisk northwesterly wind will make it feel cooler. Showers continue through the first part of next week with temperatures below average, but turning a little milder through the second half of the week.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Variety Cruises have been sailing since 1942, and thanks to them, you could set sail in 2025. You have the chance to win a 7-night small boat cruise for two worth £10,000. With your flights, meals, drinks and excursions included, you can choose from any one of their 2025 Greek adventures and find your home at sea. You'll also win an incredible £10,000 in tax-free cash that you can use to make this summer spectacular. We'll also treat you to these luxury travel gifts. For another chance to win a prize worth over £20,000, text prize to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB04 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 26th of April. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
Do you mind if I ask you a little bit about Sebastian? It really amazes me how a mother who can lose a child in such a shocking and unexpected way, so little, so precious, can then turn that grief into something so positive. How did you find the strength to get up, get a camera crew, as you say, travel to the other side of the world and investigate all of this?
I was angry at Sebastian for dying. You know, you feel like saying, God, 32 years later and I can still get very, very upset about it. I was angry that something that while he was born and lived with me and slept and then died, they were actively campaigning in New Zealand to try and stop this happening because they had a very high cot death rate there. They had the lady, the Anne Diamond, if you like, of New Zealand, a television presenter called Judy Bailey, went on telly every night and said, if you're just about to put your baby down to sleep, put him on his or her back, not the tummy, and this will help. And their cot death rate plummeted. And I went out to New Zealand and met her, and it was anger that drove me to come back and demand that we have the same advert here, the same campaign. And of course, I got all this complete nonsense from the Department of Health saying, you know, oh, young mothers do not watch television, I was told. In other words, while New Zealand mums were being told how to save their babies' lives, we actively denied British mums that advice during the time that Sebastian and others were dying.
And the other point I suppose to make is it's helpful to educate all generations, because when I had my babies, my mum would say, oh, he's not settling, just stick him on his tummy, he'll be much happier, that's what we did with you. And we had to say, well, things have changed and, you know, but it's about educating everybody, because it's not just the mums that get their hands on the babies.
Very good evening to you. I'm Aaron Armstrong in the GB newsroom. The big developing story today revolves around the Middle East. The Prime Minister has condemned Iran's reckless attack on Israel after it launched hundreds of drones and missiles towards the country. Rishi Sunak says Iran is intent on sowing chaos in its own backyard and says the UK will continue to stand up for Israel's security. Sir Keir Starmer has also condemned the attack and has called for calm. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is meeting his war cabinet with up to 100 drones expected to arrive around midnight UK time. His military says they're well prepared. Local media reports say some have already been shot down over Syria and Jordan. Israel's been on heightened alert ever since an airstrike on the Iranian embassy in Syria last week, which killed a number of top commanders. Tehran holds Israel responsible for that attack and has vowed to retaliate. Meanwhile, the White House says President Biden is being regularly updated about the situation. He's cut short a trip to Delaware and is on his way back to Washington, where he'll meet national security advisors. The US has been trying to de-escalate tensions to prevent a wider conflict in the region, although last night President Biden said he expected an Iranian attack on Israel sooner rather than later, and his message to Iran was don't. 9 people have been arrested on suspicion of committing public order offences during demonstrations in central London. Tens of thousands of pro-Palestinian protesters gathered in Westminster earlier. They were calling for a ceasefire in Gaza and urging the government to stop selling arms to Israel. A counter-demonstration against what organisers are calling anti-Israel hate also took place in the area. The suspects remain in police custody. Rishi Sunak says his heart goes out to all those affected by a knife attack at a shopping mall in Sydney that killed 6 people. The assailant injured a number of others, including a 9-month-old baby, before being challenged by a member of the public. The baby remains in critical condition. The child's mother, named as 38-year-old Ash Good, died later in hospital. The 40-year-old man was eventually shot dead by police. They say it wasn't terror-related. Tim Loughton's become the latest Tory MP to say he'll stand down at the next general election. The backbencher, who's represented East Worthing and Shoreham since 1997, served as Children's Minister in Lord Cameron's government. He said it was wiser to leave 5 minutes too soon than to continue for 5 years too long. 64 Conservative MPs have either stood down or announced they will not be seeking re-election. You can get more on all of our stories by scanning the QR code on your screen for GB News alerts, or go to our website for more details. Now, it's time for Headliners.
Hello and welcome to Headliners. I'm Nick Dixon, taking you through tomorrow's top stories for the next hour, and I'm joined by feminist icon Cressida Wetham and ADHD poster boy Jonathan Cogan. So, I'm so sorry to have you both here on the night that World War III kicked off.
We're comedians. What are we doing here?
Yeah, I know. I was hoping you had extensive foreign correspondent experience, Jonathan.
No, I once dated a girl from Italy, if that counts, but that's about it.
That's extremely tenuous. Cressida, any better?
No, absolutely not. Very serious news. And as you say, didn't think we'd be doing this when we were doing our 5 minutes at the whatever the new material night is. I can't think of the name. Yeah, it's a big old story for little us.
Yeah. We just wanted to do comedy, and then a culture war happened, then an actual war. So here we are. So let's have a look then at Sunday's front pages. So the Mail on Sunday has "She is lying, Raina Aid tells police." But the Sunday Telegraph, of course, has the big story: Iran launches swarm of kamikaze drones at Israel. The Observer: at-risk children farmed out to illegal private care homes. Sunday Express: far-left plot to hijack Labour.